Happy Sabbath, everybody. I hope you guys are having a fantastic day and have had a fantastic couple of weeks. Uh, it's just been very hectic, but I have been trying to indulge myself in a lot of these horror films and being able to get them ready and record them for you. So it's just going to be what I have. And I hope you guys are enjoying this. It's kind of frustrating to me trying to find a good uh, rhythm for you guys to make it fun and exciting, but also to do something that I enjoy. And you know what? I just enjoy it, and I enjoy talking about any and all types of movies. And being horror films, I just love. The rush that you get sometimes with horror films, that thriller, the what's gonna happen kind of sense, and so that's just kind of what led me to talk about this week, Coraline. And I know I'm not following the schedule that I have. I'm going to try to rewire it. I'm going to be looking at newer films sooner and just trying to grasp a little bit of that. But this past couple of weeks, I had the opportunity to show this movie to my daughters, and it wasn't until I watched it with my daughters that I realized this is not really a family movie. It should be like a teen horror, right? The concept of everything that was there, the cinematography, the horror, suspense, thriller uh, features that it had on it really could freak out any kid. And luckily, I have kind of done my best to desensitize my kids, not in a way of I want them just to be cautious, but when it comes to movies, I have made sure to tell them, like, hey, this isn't real. These are the things. I kind of explained to them just exactly what it is. And they luckily had a lot of questions regarding it, which had me realize, like, yeah, this movie for being 2009 was still pretty creepy. But before I go on with that, let me hit my theme song and then we will continue. All right. So yeah, so let's start off with this movie, Coraline, claymation. I love claymation, and this director himself has directed. He was the one who did Nightmare Before Christmas and James and the Giant Peach. So this director has a good foot in with claymation and just making everything look phenomenal. Like, don't get me wrong, this movie has really great scenes and really great cinematography and just how it all works out. Uh, but with like Nightmare Before Christmas, we were introduced to Halloween Town. So we knew before anything that, okay, this was going to be a little bit kind of spooky because we're in Halloween, the Pumpkin King, you have all the other, vampires, the boogeyman, all that stuff. Like you're looking at that, but they made it in a playful way, like they're wanting to, like sorry, Jack the Skeleton King or the Pumpkin King is getting kind of tired of the same routine, and then he wants to, take over a different holiday. So you kind of get like a different mix of it. James and the Giant Peach kind of almost, it's not the same, but it has a kind of way around it. But this one was labeled as a family sci-fi movie, and I honestly thought this is actually more like a kid horror film. Like everything that started the movie off just made everything have that vibe of very like eerie. Like for example, we get it. Coraline moved to with her family to this place, and I believe they moved there. Not sure because of money issues. They really don't talk about it. They just said that they moved there and that the dad was working on something big, which was a book that they had about gardening. So you see that the parents, both of them, I'm guessing, looking at how the conversation was, the mom is the editor and the dad is the writer. So you have dad, who's writing this book, being pushed by mom, who has to edit it, who's then also being pushed by, I'm guessing, her boss. And so you have these two workaholic parents who, for some reason, move everybody out to this remote little area where they are then introduced to this very old house that has a pretty big secret that most nobody knows about other than, Wiley. And and then, since Coraline's hating all this, she's like, "Ah, I can't do this." Finds a key, finds this hidden door, and that hidden door ends up opening to another world, right? And as she goes into the world, she sees her doppelganger mom and doppelganger dad. But now the difference between them, and her real parents is that they have buttons for eyes. Which my daughter was like, "Oh, why do they have buttons in their eyes? Why would she believe that that's her parents? Why would she be okay with that?" And I'm like, 100% perfect question to ask in a certain scenario. Like, I don't know why she was just like, "Ah, okay, cool. Like, thank you for feeding me." And like, I get her situation wasn't good, but the fact that you're seeing your parents, but with buttons in their eyes, and you're just like, well, at least I'm getting what I couldn't get on the other side, right? That's where I'm just like, and she was old enough to understand, like, hey, they have to work, they got a couple deadlines, like they got things that they got to do to maintain the family. So anyway, she looked for an out to, I don't know, whatevs. She just wanted to look for an out, and she became the victim of this whatever beast or spider or creature lived in this other world. So as it all unravels, right, you see her keep going back because she loved the feeling that was there, the everything that was happening. Somehow that world ended up doppelganging everybody that lived in the vicinity. And yet she still was just like, wow, this is great. And I still was just like watching this with my kids, was like, how would she be okay with this? Like the two old ladies in the other world do, awesome tricks and awesome, like an awesome show. And then they unzip to be like super skinnier. And yet she's like, wow, still like very, very crazy actually. Uh, and then, you get the mice who are very suspicious. So you get this other area that's just not looking good. And yet she's taking it all right. She ends up always like waking up back to the real world and just not enjoying it because they're trying to get stuff done, right? And honestly, this happens like within like 2 or 3 days. I don't know how the time set really worked. They moved. Within that move, they honestly like she found the key. The following day, they were heading to the store. The dad was, had the book ready and was heading toward, gonna get it either edited or approved, not approved, but like, yeah, edited. So they were just going there. And then all of a sudden she goes back to the world, gets a little bit of another show, like 2 days. And then she gets the like, the other mother gives her like the proposition of like, well, if you really enjoy this, come live with us, but you have to give us your eyes, or give me your eyes, because obviously it wasn't an us kind of a thing, it was just more her. And that's when she was like, whoa, I'm not gonna do that. And she even thought about it until then the other lady kind of just went against her and then threw her into this mirror, and then we end up finding out that she's killed and or harvested these other kids, right? Which ended up being like ghosts of the past of her killers, right? Or her victims, right? So I had to explain that to my girls because they're like, well, who are those? I'm like, well, she killed them. They were the ones who went to the world before, decided to get their eyes pulled out, and then now their spirit lives there. So now she has to get their eye or the ball to get them all safe, and or like free their spirit to go with God, or just free their spirit from wherever it's trapped. And so that that ends up being the one thing there. The cool part about it was, again, like the sequences they had, the colors and everything was really cool. But when it came to like looking at it in a kid view, I felt like, man, yeah, there was a lot of things that were very pretty, like freaky, especially when the other mother like finally just had it and then like stretched into like whatever feature, whatever, like whatever spider creature thing it was. Right, that part was like, holy like, whoa, calm down, lady. Like, like, wow. And like, it didn't scare me because I've seen it before. I saw it in 2009, and I even back then was like, this is some weird ass shit. Like, it was for me. I even thought it was crazy. But when it came to this other like this other occasion, watching it with my kids, I was just like, wow, like that is very disturbing, and especially to call it a family movie. Like I wouldn't. Well, I'm not gonna say I wouldn't show my kids this because I obviously did. But like I just wouldn't. I wouldn't show. I wouldn't if they were very sensitive to these type of things, I wouldn't show it. But obviously with my kids, I've gotten them used to a little bit of horror because I enjoy it, and there's times that they come and see what I'm looking at, and I have to kind of tell them like it's fake. I don't know if you guys remember this or if you've heard this before, but like when I was recording it, and I believe it was it chapter one. I remember I was watching it and I was just kind of recording and talking about the movie. And it was at the times that I was actually watching the movies and recording at the same time. So we were kind of doing like a whole viewing of my commentary. And I remember as I was recording and watching the movie, I would look over and glimpse, and right before the it the clown or Pennywise the clown pops up to grab Georgie's hand. Uh, I paused it and I looked over and I saw that my daughter, who was supposed to be asleep, wasn't asleep, and she had creeped. She had creeped downstairs or crept. I don't know how you say it. Whoever wants to let me know. But she came downstairs quietly and stood in the corner where I couldn't see her clearly because I was facing, obviously, the TV. I was facing away from the stairs. Uh, I couldn't see her clearly, and so she was just watching to see what I was doing. She was very fascinated that I was talking while the movie was going on and kind of giving all this synopsis. If I hadn't had that feeling of, hey, look around you, and not to be like, oh, there's someone watching you, like, ooh, just more like it was just like a feeling like, hey, you should pause because something is gonna happen and it could scar someone around you. And when I looked over and I saw her, I was like, oh, thank goodness, right? And she asked me like, what happens? Does he get his arm chopped off? And I let her know, like, yeah, he ends up killing the kid. And I'm like, but I don't want you to see that. This is my movie. I don't want you to be frightened. I'm like, and I kind of explained to her what the creature itself it was, or Pennywise was. And so she's like, oh, okay. And then I'm like, well, and then I took her to bed and all that stuff. So I made sure, I do make sure not to get her, or get at least my oldest and well, both of my kids. I make sure not to get them into like the deepest of the darkest of horrors yet, right? Once it's like once they get like 13 and there's PG-13 movies, or there's like once they're at 17, or once they're like, Dad, I can take it. Let's watch some like very freaky ones, Conjuring or whatever. We'll totally watch them. But I'm slowly getting them there because I love horror films, and I want them to know it's not about the realities of it. It's just like how they create the feeling of it. And so back to this movie, that's just exactly how it was, and this isn't the first claymation movie I've watched with them. They love Nightmare Before Christmas. I've never watched James and the Giant Peach with them, but we watched like the Trolls one. We also watched which one is this one? One of my favorites, the Corpse Bride. There we go. And so we've watched all these other ones that have like that kind of eerie stuff, but they're not as creepy as this one was, right? Where in the other ones, Trolls, the Corpse Bride, yes, in the Corpse Bride he marries a dead girl, but it wasn't really like like there's a moment where everybody started freaking out when all the people were coming back to life. So spoiler alerts if you haven't seen that one, but there's a part that everybody, all the dead people, have to come up from the dead, from the world of the dead, right? The whatever, and the realm of the dead. That's what I was looking for. The realm of the dead, and go to the wedding. So that way, the main character would drink the poison, die, and then they would officially be married with the corpse bride. And when everybody like was freaking out because they were seeing like zombies, like like dead, the dead have risen, and they were all freaking out. Then all of a sudden, there's one little boy who goes up to one of them and then just looks and then says like, "Grandpa," and he's like, "Oh," and then everyone's like, "Hey, it's our family members," like it was like one of those like moments where you're like, "Wait, what?" It was supposed to be scary, but really wasn't. So those type of like scenarios when it came to those movies is what we kind of enjoyed, and that's why I loved watching it. Especially like it's a musical, all the claymation is just amazing, and so I always love showing my kids movies that are kind of cartoonish or like that we've seen before. And so when it came to this one, I thought no harm on it, and then when I started watching it, I was like, I hope they don't get super freaked out. My little one, I was more focused on her because I was like, man, I gotta explain to her a lot that this isn't real. That like, there's not really a spider lady coming out you. We don't have a secret door. Like like if I'm feel like I'm working because I'm working from home, don't worry, I'm gonna have time with you. We're gonna play. Like I had to like kind of reassure her not to freak her out the most. But my oldest, it was more like she was just very curious of like why would Coraline believe this other mother with button eyes, or why did she take the parents? Why did Coraline have to go back and get the balls? Like, so she had all those questions to kind of understand the story, which was fine. All in all, I enjoy this movie. I loved it, but I added it to my episode because I am a true believer that this should be not a family sci-fi movie, but a kid horror, or you could even call it a teen horror. I don't know, but it should be in the same categories as like the Goosebumps, right? Like the Goosebumps, we know cheesy as but they were in a way still kind of eerie and spooky when it came to that stuff. So for me, I think it would just be very good if we kept it in a good genre. So that way when people tend to watch it, because we as or well, you know what I'm gonna say, we as millennials love to rewatch things that we really loved and we really enjoyed. Coraline was one that came out in 2009. I was graduating that year, watched it, still kind of was like, this is kind of weird. This isn't a. I even remembered when I watched it and I said, this is not a family, like this is not for kids. Exactly what I said. Obviously, a couple years later, I showed it to my kids. So sorry, girls, sorry about that. But in reality, it at least gave me the opportunity to realize that yeah, this should be in a category of family. It should be in a different category, so that way you can differentiate. Like, do I really want to experience have them experience some horror setting, or should we just kind of not do that? And so uh, that's exactly what I wanted to discuss this week, because it was the one thing I watched and I said, you know what? Nobody talks about this a lot, and here it is. It may have not been as organized as I normally am on it, but it had to be said. Coraline being what it is, it's a pretty entertaining claymation, and I would recommend it if you want to get your kids into horror. This could be kind of a good starting step, right? That and Goosebumps, and I'll get to those later, but this is a pretty good starting step because you can kind of help them get into what the eeriness of horror really is. different type of creatures that can be created when it comes to the imagination of horror. So this one I think is a really good like beginner 101, horror course for kids, right? So if you've seen it and you enjoyed it, awesome. If you also thought this was like super creepy, like don't ever show your kids, like how dare you show it to your kids, leave me a comment. Be interactive with me. I'm not trying to like plead for you guys, but I'm just saying. What did you think about it? And if you really liked it, or if you have other recommendations of what movies I should watch that you're not willing to watch, but hey, your buddy Geo over here will watch it and let you know if it was good or bad. Send them over. You can send them to my email at Geo. So it's Geo Saavedra. So GIOSAAVEDRA 19 at gmail.com. And you can say, you can just put potential horror episode and then just let me know. I'm also selling a t-shirt that says horror films thrill me on Etsy. Just look for Gio's Thoughts. I have all sizes for both men and women. And then if you do want to help out in this podcast in any way, you can always go to my website, geosthoughts.com, click support creator. Honestly, any contribution will help. Like I said, this is a hobby. I love doing this, but I do I any donation would be very much appreciated. Well, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day and see you guys all next week.